Yeah, great comment about keeping the audience engaged. And one of the best ways on a Zoom thing is you be looking at the light. Look to the light. I'm so glad that you feel like we've increased our understanding of the outline. Now let's talk about the few things I also want to re-emphasize. By the way, that I just did, that was a transition statement. We've done this, now let's do this. And by saying it out loud, your minds began to organize knowing what we were doing. I hope I model some of this stuff. So you have this PDF of your PowerPoint already attached in News. And I wrote a note that I was going to send you a transition list and put it in News, but I don't need to. It's in the PowerPoint. If you go look at it, you can do that. I can't recall the source that I used with this, but don't forget, you need to state your purpose in your speeches, organize it so that it's going to be understandable, coherent, really hook us to start with. And then Megan, you just wrote in a note that now you know what to do to fix it. Don't forget, revision is not a 4-letter word. That's a Morphew quote. I'm going to put on a t-shirt someday and copyright. I've been saying it for years. Revision is not a bad thing. Don't forget to harness stories. When you toss those in, they're going to pull your listeners in. And it's not just you're bombarding them with facts, right? Always good to make your audience laugh. I don't think I do that intentionally, but sometimes people laugh at me and I laugh with them. So whatever works for you, see if you can raise the appeal that way. The quotes that you're going to use will raise the believability. If you use an authoritative source and you say what they say, you know, you quote them, you cite them, then you're going to raise your own credibility and your speech credibility. And it's suggested that you close with some strong line and stop and then look. When some of you guys were speaking, you did a great job of not only modulating your voice when you added, especially most of you, when you added dialogue where the character said something in the stories, or in your personal experience stories, you began to get more animated with your voice. So match your vocal delivery with your non-vocal cues. I saw a couple of students playing with some wires, and that's distracting. So be aware of your nonverbal cues. I saw a few messing with their hair or being uncomfortable, or even looking down to read. And that is a distraction. Remember, when you're presenting, it's all about the audience. So you got to connect with them. And even I have a hard time remembering I've got to look to the light if you're on a Zoom face-to-face. Animate your facial expressions appropriately, and I see you guys do it. Since we're on Zoom and we're so close up, even minor expressions, when you do a little sideways smile, or you like roll your eyes, or you look up to the ceiling, that's very appropriate, and it enhances the telling. Remember to maintain eye contact. Try, if you're not a natural hand talker like Morphew, I use my hands when I speak. You know people like that, right? If you're not a natural one, I want you to plan 3 places where you're going to do a hand gesture. Somebody did that in the storytelling yesterday, where it was obvious they had intentionally planned a hand gesture, and I was like, yes, thank you. Remember to do that. You need to be expressive for your speeches. When you're in person, your body will be a bigger tool that you can use to connect that message. Be aware of your posture. I like to sit up straight, but then we get going for 3 hours on video. I'll do this and lay back. When you are the speaker, be aware of your posture. If you're intentionally doing something to act like you're a character, that's one thing. But if you look disconnected, we may be disconnected. And it says dress appropriately. This is, by the way, I should have started this with, the Speaker's Guidebook gives you some tips on how to use nonverbal communication. There. That's a citation, by the way. This is the slide where I actually wrote the source on here so I would remember to say my quote, and then I had my chart. But the red caught my eye and I forgot about saying it. Anyhow, you see how I did it? The Speaker's Guidebook, 4th edition, says blah, 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 blah. That's a cite. For you science people, all you people that are in the medical stuff, I put this. This is your vocal muscles, your vocal area there, with everything labeled. The air you put in, the air you put out, the intensity you add to your voice, you know, speaking from the diaphragm, and I'm holding underneath my, like at the bottom of your, it's a big muscle right underneath the bottom of your rib cage area, controls your pacing, whether you use a good pause, you control that all right here and down here in your diaphragm. It will intensify the tone or make it more gentle. You can increase your speed. And I really, we have at least one person that needs to be very clear and distinct. That means that some of your words need to be a little more crisp so that you'll be understood. One of the best tools that you guys have as a speaker is pause. The power of stopping and allowing the words to get processed in your listeners' minds. So remember the power of pause, okay? It's going to engage your listeners. Here again, the Speaker's Guidebook says that you can ask these questions of yourself to make your your voice matter. I need to do a new design idea on this one, don't I? Because I've got my red thing cut off. There we go. I just clicked design ideas and my power. No, I want the font a little bigger on the, yeah, there we go. Your voice matters. I always save that one. Your voice matters. Do you project authority and act like you know what you're talking about? Are you too loud? I can be accused of that at times. All of you did fine as far as your volume being too soft. I did notice that a couple of students get quieter at the end of your sentences, and those who are knowledgeable about speech call that dropping your sentence. You want to make sure that all of your words are heard. The only time I've heard monotone in here is when people were actually reading to us and it seemed like their pacing and their voice never changed. They didn't add dialogue that had a good vocal control for different characters. So just be aware of that. Again, you guys are going to be fine, but if you notice that you get comments about that, then you may want to make it an intentional practice to improve that. Use of pause is the first great tool for that. And then see if there's any area where you can emphasize your voice or reduce the emphasis, right? Couple were too fast, but that was all about reading to us. So is your rate of speech comfortable? I was impressed on this telling that there were less you know, I mean, and like. Some of you used a lot of that in your PES, and then you did a so much better job. I didn't hear that in the storytellings. Those are called vocal fillers or disfluencies that can impact the communication of your message. All right. I think I've got the rest of those already talked about. There we go. I've already talked about intentional gestures. You want to use those. I'm going to get rid of this text box in the back, and they say, oh, sorry, we don't have any design for the ideas for this slide. It's because Morphew put too many pictures on it. Look how simple you could add a gesture or two. See how these hands are? You can enumerate things by touching if you're counting off 1, 2, 3, that's always a great place. Did you guys watch Vanessa Van Edwards' 7 hand gestures for homework one night? Yeah. Did you catch that bit about counting? Every time you count, you can hold up numbers or you can count them off. And you watched the guys that were so funny about the Stanford graduates, the chop, the gift, and what was the last one? Chop was last. Oh, he touched his chest. So anytime there's emotional, even Vanessa Van Edwards said, you can just gesture by holding near your heart. And that says, this is important to me. You know? So gestures are easy. Let's use them, even if we're on Zoom. Any comments?